I had big business and personal plans for the rest of this year. Then I had a family issue to come up that took me off my game for a couple of weeks. And then 2 weeks ago, I got the flu and was in bed for 5 days. So now those big plans I had for December and November have gone sideways. And if you've had some goals or some plans to come up that it just doesn't look like they're going to get done in the time you allotted to have them done in, well, this episode is for you because today I'm talking about how to get back on track when your plans go sideways. Hello and welcome to Morning Coffee with Joyce. I'm Joyce Avrils of ARichLife.com, and I host this show to give you the tools you need to live a purpose-aligned life. And before we dive into our materials, I'm going to pull up the video on my laptop so that if there are any questions or comments, I will be able to address them. I used to be able to get the comments on my cell phone, but for some reason that doesn't happen anymore. So, okay, here we go. All right, so we've all had those times in our life, when things just don't go according to plan. Some things you might have planned to take a few minutes or a couple of hours ends up taking way longer than you thought. They take up the bulk of your time, or your to-do list keeps growing and you're not able to check anything off the list. That big goal that you set looks like it's just not going to happen. And you need to do something, but you don't know how to get back on track. You don't know exactly what that something is. So you become frustrated because things are going sideways, ashamed that you can't get them back on track, and you just want to give up and take a nap. And you know what? Sometimes you do need to just take a nap because there's nothing wrong with resting and regrouping and letting your mind and your body rest and find a solution. So there's no guilt in taking a nap. That's perfectly acceptable. But if napping isn't your thing, I'm going to give you 5 tips about what you can do to get things back on track. And the steps, and actually they're the steps that I'm walking through right now. So you're getting this fresh off the press, as you will, because like I said, I'm going through this right now. So step number 1 is to acknowledge your frustration and move on. Other than a cold every now and then, I rarely get sick. So when I got the flu 2 weeks ago, it really threw me off my game. I had planned on using that time and those prior 2 weeks that I had to deal with the family issue to complete some projects for this month and next month. But now my timeline is all messed up and I'm trying to figure out how to fix it. So I'm frustrated, but you know what? It's okay to be frustrated. It's okay to be upset. The key to this, however, is not to stay in that frustration, not to stay in that upset or overwhelm, because frustration is an emotional response to opposition to the fulfillment of your individual will. That's the dictionary definition. But the simple thing is, the better way to describe it is, frustration is when what happens when you don't get what you want when you want it. And I don't believe that it was God's intention that I get the flu. I don't believe that for a minute. But I do know that these projects that I had set aside for November and December are His will for my life. And so even though I was frustrated because my timeline wasn't going to, the timeline that I set actually wasn't going to happen, that doesn't mean that I get to give up on completing those projects that God wants me to complete. So I acknowledge that I'm frustrated, but I have to move forward even while frustrated. And Galatians 6:9 reminds us, let's not get tired of doing what is good. At just the right time, we will reap a harvest of blessing if we don't give up. So, number 2 is change your mindset by changing your location. As I was recovering from the flu, I finally got to a point where I could rationally think about my projects and what I was going to do with them. And at that point, I knew I needed a new plan, and my negative thinking, my frustration wasn't going to get me there. So I had to take a break. I went to Starbucks for an hour and I concentrated on moving forward instead of thinking about how my plans had gone sideways. And sometimes that's what you need to do, not necessarily go to Starbucks, but take a break. 5 minutes, an hour, a day, maybe even a long weekend to interrupt your negative thinking. If you're in a place of negative thinking and frustration because things have just gone sideways, then take a break. When our plans get off track, it's very easy to fall into negative thinking. In order to stop yourself from dwelling on those negative thoughts, sometimes you have to physically change your location. I went to Starbucks. Maybe you need to go for a walk, go see a movie, have lunch in the park. Like I said, take a long weekend. Wherever your happy place is, go there and change your mindset about your plans. Try to recapture that excitement about the plans that you had in the first place. There's nothing I can do about my missed timelines because I had the flu. I can't go back and change that. So it doesn't do me any good to dwell on that. It doesn't do me any good to stay in a place of frustration or stay in a place of overwhelm. And so I need to break that cycle. And sometimes to do that, we need to physically remove ourselves to a place that will allow us to change the way we're thinking. Philippians 3:13 through 14, two of my favorite verses, says, "Brothers, I do not consider that I have made it my own. But one thing I do, forgetting what lies behind and straining forward to what lies ahead, I press toward the goal for the prize of the upward call of God in Christ Jesus." We can't change what has gone before, but we can press on. We can keep moving forward. Number 3 is simplify your to-do list. That time that I spent in Starbucks thinking about this and changing my mindset and looking at my plans, it became totally clear to me that even if I had not gotten sick, even if I didn't have that family issue I had to deal with 2 weeks before getting sick, there was no way I was going to be able to complete those plans in the time that I had allotted to them. So I had to ask myself, what can I get done by December 31st? And now what I'd like to get, not what I'd like to get done or what I hope to get done, but really, realistically, what are those 1 or 2 things that God is absolutely calling me to do right now? And then the question becomes, what things do I need to take off my to-do list? And you have to ask yourself these same questions. Look at the plans that went sideways and decide, is there something here that I do not have to do right now? Is there something that God is calling me to do right now or have completed by a certain date? It might be by the end of the year. It might be some other time. And decide on what those things are. Because the truth is, when you simplify your plans and you get to what is really essential, and then you can gain momentum and start refocusing on the things that you absolutely need to get done. And this is how you get out of overwhelm and frustration. So I looked at my 5 big projects that are wonderful projects that I will get done, but I know I'm not going to be able to do them in 2 months. Well, now it's a month and a half. I know I'm not going to be able to do that. And so I reduced it to 2 of the smaller projects on my list. And that's manageable. And I won't have to work weeks and work nights and weekends, which I was going to have to do if I kept those 5 things. And, so when I really looked at my plans, I could see that they were pretty ambitious. And I was going to have to work many more hours to get them done. And that's just not in the game plan right now. At the beginning of 2023, I set a goal of not working nights unless I was going to be teaching a class or attending a class, something like that, but not working every night and not working on Saturday and Sunday. And I've been really good at doing that. But if I had kept things the way that they were, then, I was going to have to go back on that goal that I had set. And I don't want to do that. Psalm 61:2 says, "From the ends of the earth, I cry to you for help when my heart is overwhelmed. Lead me to the towering rock of safety." God is our rock of safety. And I know I set that goal at the beginning of 2023 because it was one that he had led me to set. And I did not want to go back on that. And when my heart is overwhelmed, I'm to cry out to him. And so it was like, Lord, what can I do to fix this? Because I don't want to go back to doing that. And so that's how I came up with my 2 smaller projects. Now, once you have your 2 smaller projects, the 4th step in this process is to tackle something on your new to-do list. So to get some momentum going, I looked at my to-do list and I chose the easier of the two projects as the one I was going to get started with. I don't have time to think about what might have been. I need to concentrate on what can be. So, since I'm going to be running some Facebook ads for this project, I decided that I would tackle setting up my targeting for those ads. In other words, who are the women that I'm going to be running these ads to? That's an important step in the process of this project, but it's also a fairly easy one that I could get done in less than an hour. And the important thing about this is that it was a way for me to get into action instead of sitting in frustration. It was a way to get back on track. So there are two theories about where to or how to build or write out an essential to-do list. Some people say that you need to start with the hardest thing first and get that big, scary thing, that big, hard thing out of the way. The second theory is to start with the easiest thing first to gain some momentum. I chose the easier thing because I wanted to get back into momentum. I wanted to get back in my stride. And so that's what I chose to do. But, you do what works best for you. Pick one thing on your new to-do list and check that thing off, because what happens once you gain some momentum and you start making progress, that progress and that momentum will bring about more progress and more momentum. And so it's really important that at this stage that you do actually have some momentum and gain some momentum for doing what needs to get done. And so that's why I chose the easier of the two. But again, if you want to choose the harder one first, you can do that, because that may very well work for you. Ezra 10:4 says, "Arise, for it is your task, and we are with you. Be strong and do it." And that's the important part, the doing part. Whenever I talk about how-tos, you can always be assured that there are going to be two parts that I'm going to talk about. One is taking action, and the other is having a plan. And so that is the taking action part. Now, step 5 is to make a plan for moving forward. Sitting in Starbucks, I realized I needed a new plan. So I had to erase the timelines in my calendar and replace them with my streamlined two-project to-do list. And if you've been in my community for a while, I like a good plan. I love planning. And I realize that plans don't always go the way we want them to. For instance, you might get sick with the flu and you can't do what you thought you were going to do, or something else comes up. But the thing about this is you cannot get back on track with some kind of plan, because again, that only leads to overwhelm and frustration. And you probably have seen a recurring phrase here: overwhelm and frustration. Good morning, Thetra. Good morning, Georgette. So glad to see you both here. But when things don't go as planned, or your plans go sideways, you do become frustrated and you do become overwhelmed. But like I said in the very first step in this process, it's okay to feel frustrated. It's okay to feel overwhelmed. Just don't stay there. And so that's where the other steps come in. So this whole idea of making a plan so that you can move forward means that you get a fresh opportunity to start again, to start over. So prayerfully set up yourself for success by reworking your plan and creating a new to-do list, which is what I did. Because you can imagine, if I started out with a plan of 5 big projects and I decrease it down to 2 smaller projects, the timelines are going to be different. But they're also more manageable, because now I'm working with a month and a half. I'm not working with 2 full months. I'm working with a month and a half. And so that's what I needed to do to come up with this new plan. So Philippians 1:6 says, "And I am certain that God, who began a good work within you, will continue his work until it is finally finished on the day when Christ Jesus returns." And so we continue. God is still working in us. Jesus is still working in us, but we continue our work. We continue doing those things that he's called us to do. Whether the plans that went sideways involve your business or a personal goal like marriage or school or writing your memoirs or whatever it is, we can always get back on track if we use a system. And the one that I'm sharing with you, like I said, is the one that I'm walking through right now. So if your plans have gone sideways and you want to get back on track, take these 5 steps. Number 1, acknowledge your frustration and move on. Number 2, change your mindset by changing your location. Number 3, simplify your to-do list. Number 4, tackle something on that new to-do list. And then 5, make a plan for moving forward. I've completed most of the steps on these. I'm working on the last one, and I can tell you it's working. And that's why I can share this with you and let you know that you can do this. If you need to get back on track with some things, you can use these 5 steps to do it too, because it's working. So don't give up thinking that there's nothing you can do. Use these 5 steps, and you can turn around any situation that has gone sideways. So thank you for joining me today live and on the replay. Have a great weekend and also a wonderful Thanksgiving. And since Thanksgiving is next weekend or next week, I won't be doing a show next week, but I will see you same place, same time on December 1st. So have a blessed rest of your day, a blessed weekend, a blessed Thanksgiving, and I'll see you on December 1st, if not before. Bye for now.